not going 7-9. Okay? I'm not going 7-9. Okay? 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 I'm not going 7-9. Okay?
Hi, and welcome to the Grueling Truth LA Rams 2.0 show, brought to you by Gridiron Mo, an interesting new interactive football game app which pits you against other football fans across the country in predicting the next play within a live NFL game. Think you're smarter than the average fan? Check out Gridiron Mo at gridironmo.com. My name's Oz Davis. I'm the co-host of the LA Rams 2.0 show, and joining me as co-host, as always, is former Notre Dame great and player with the Buffalo Bills and Los Angeles Rams in the 1980s, Tony Hunter. Tony, how are you this week?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Oz. Doing great.
Great. All right. Love to hear it. Today, Tony and I are being joined by a very special guest. He's an NFL Pro Bowl running back, Comeback Player of the Year award winner. He's also a guy that, like Tony, is an Ohio boy, played football at Notre Dame, was drafted in the first round by the Buffalo Bills, ended up on the Los Angeles Rams in the 1980s. And if you haven't guessed by now, his name is Greg Bell. Greg, how are you doing today? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Hey, great to be here, guys.
Great having you, Greg. Great having you.
I was actually a bit surprised to hear, Greg. So you liked Los Angeles so much you stayed out here, huh?
Let me tell you what. It wasn't that I just liked Los Angeles. I actually live up in Santa Barbara, which is about an hour and 40 minutes north of L.A. And, I started a foundation out here 26 years ago called Athletes for Life. And we've been, striving to be a mentoring group for roughly about 3,000 kids a year, from after-school education programs to life skill mentoring camps that we do in the summer. And this is where I made the biggest impact, I guess you could say, from a football standpoint when I was with the Los Angeles Rams, and I just decided to make it home.
Fantastic, Greg. Fantastic. Well, we're gonna, as is our usual want here on the show, we're gonna talk about the present day Los Angeles Rams a little bit. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask you a little bit about your prior career, Greg. I guess the first question I have for you, Greg, specifically is when you first came to Notre Dame back in, I guess it was like 1980 or so, and you met this guy Tony Hunter. Did you imagine that 35 years later you would still be linked with this guy?
You know what, Tony? Most people, and I want to say that Tony and I had crossed paths when I was a junior in high school because he ran track as well at Cincinnati Bowler.
And I remember that, Greg. I remember you talking smack on the track. Yeah. I remember that to this day. But you backed it up. You backed it up.
We crossed paths when we were juniors. He was a senior because, everybody had heard about Tony because, if I'm not mistaken, Tony, you were probably number one recruit in 1979 coming out of Moeller. You were one of the highest recruited guys in the country for football. And,
I was the number one wide receiver in the country. I think Eric Dickerson was the number one running back, and then John Elway, of course, was the number one quarterback.
Right. Well, we didn't care about those other states because Ohio was the only state that played football at that time. It was one of those things where, I joke with a lot of kids because back in our time, we didn't have ESPN, we didn't have all the social media, and it really just traveled by word of mouth. Of course, we had Blue Chip Magazine back then and Track and Field News, so, our names are already out there nationally, and so it was one of those things where when I came to Notre Dame, Ohio boys always gravitate together. I don't know why that was, but we kind of gravitated. We all kind of knew our names and knew what our accomplishments were, and we knew that the fact that we were coming to Notre Dame, we are probably, I hate to make it sound somewhat conceited, but, you know, Tony knows me. I tell the truth. We were the cream of the crop. You know, the guys who come in that year, I mean, every year Notre Dame had either the number 1 or number 2 recruiting class. And
oh, man, I miss those days. I miss those days, Greg, of Notre Dame recruiting like that. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so, you know, we knew we were going to be competing for national titles. And, you know, blessed it for us that, you know, we came in. We had some great coaches. I mean, when you think about coaches, nobody tends to remember that the fact that, you know, by our sophomore and junior year, Tony's junior and senior year, Greg Bloss, who became one of the top defensive coordinators in the National Football League, was on our staff. Jim Johnson, who was one of the top defensive coordinators for years in the National Football League, he was on our staff. You know, Bro Yanto. We had some great coaches that coached us when we were kids and took us in so that by the time we got to the National Football League, we had seen some of the best coaches that we were ever going to work with, and now we were having a chance to work with them in the pros. So,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, you know, you talk about that camaraderie. We knew we were getting coached well. All we had to do was perform, and you know, Tony and I, my freshman year, Tony's sophomore year, you know, we were probably one of the best teams in the country. And outside of a couple fumbles, we probably would have won the national championship in the Sugar Bowl.
That's right. We played Herschel Walker in Georgia down in the Sugar Bowl, and I tell you, that was one of the best times of my life. We spent a week down in New Orleans, and we should have won that game. We were a better football team, but Georgia. Herschel Walker was a little much for us to handle, but I still feel to this day that we should have won that football game.
Now, I'm glad you brought up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I said, you know, too bad sometimes, you know, in basketball they give you 2 or 3 chances at the championship. In football, one and all.
That's it. I can remember Greg. We actually just kind of going back to the relationship Greg and I have. As I said, we ran track against one another in the state finals for the Ohio championship, and we ran track against one another. I can even remember Greg's recruiting trip to Notre Dame, and then we actually wound up as teammates again with the Buffalo Bills.
Right.
Okay. I was the first-round pick in 1983. I was the Bills' first-round pick. The very next year, the Bills went back to Notre Dame and drafted Greg Bell as their first-round pick. And that was 1984, I think, wasn't it, Greg?
Correct.
So I tell you, we have a history together. And then, on top of that, I went and played for the Rams for a couple of years before I got hurt. And Greg winds up with the Rams. When did you go to the Rams, Greg? Was it 88 or 8?
No, I came in 87. I want to say that would have been your last year with them, right?
Oh, yeah, that was my last year.
88.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Was Jackie Slater and Dennis Hare and those guys still there?
Oh, yeah, Dennis was there. That was Dennis's last year. Jackie, of course, played a couple more. But Mike Wilshire, Jerry Gray, Johnny Johnson, Gary Peter, Mel Owen.
Okay, well, all the same guys that were my teammates were still there. And Greg, I did not realize that. I did not realize that they were still there when you were there. So, did they still have that dominant offensive line? Because when I played there.
And, think about it. We even got Kevin Green during that era, too. So you're talking about Kevin Green, who was a sack specialist. And Kevin was wired for perfection, man. This guy came 100 miles a minute every play.
Oh, hey, I played against Kevin my first year with the Rams. I came into camp. Kevin arrived at camp with the rookies. So the first day I came to camp, I was going head-to-head against Kevin Green, and he was a free agent, but he was a beast. And I knew he would be good. I don't know. I couldn't predict that he would be a Hall of Fame player one day, but, man, he was a load to handle for anybody that tried to block him.
Right.
Okay, I want to rewind a little bit. You guys are running away with it. I want to rewind a little bit. Okay, so you're drafted in the first round, Greg, in '84, and like Tony just said, he had been drafted by the Bills in '83. I'm wondering, okay, so when you were drafted, Greg, what was your reaction? And did you immediately call up Tony and say, "Hey, I'm coming to Buffalo," or what happened in those days?
I'll tell you what. Going into the draft, I had already had a promise from Bobby Beathard that he was going to pick me with the 32nd pick. They had won the Super Bowl that year. I spent about a week in D.C. with Bobby, and Bobby, if he tells you something, you're kind of in. I was actually, I guess you could call it the sleeper of the draft, because 1984, most people probably can't remember this, but that was the first year of Mel Kiper. And so me and Mel we will forever be linked at the hip, because Chris Berman asked Mel Kiper who was the sleeper pick of the draft, and Mel Kiper came up with the name Greg Bell.
Nice.
It blew Chris Berman away, because he didn't know, he didn't even have the name on his paper, all his sheets. He goes,
right.
Where did you come up with that one? And it was kind of funny, but I knew I was going to be a first rounder. I just didn't think at that time Buffalo had the 14th pick.
Okay, you were 14. Okay.
Yeah, so no. Buffalo had the 14th pick, but I knew I wasn't going to be picked that high, so they traded back. And as soon as they traded back from 14 to 26, all of a sudden the phone started ringing, because of course Bobby called me immediately and said, "You got to sit tight. Don't say anything." And I said, "I'm not." And then all of a sudden, Terry Bledsoe called from Buffalo, who was the general manager. And when you don't really care about who calls, you just want to be picked. And
exactly.
The excitement started. I didn't really have to call Tony, because after I was in my agent's home in Akron, and as soon as the pick went through, we were in the car headed to Buffalo, and the next morning, Tony was there. So,
and we actually roomed together. That first year. Was that the first year?
Exactly.
Yeah, we actually roomed together.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, we were already excited, and, the fact of the matter is, they had gotten two really good players that could help them. We was really an influx, because, in the National Football League today, as in the National Football League then, you got to have a great quarterback if you want to be productive. Unfortunately for us, we were at the end of Joe Ferguson's career. And
oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah, when he was his first 5, 6, 7, 8 years in the league, but he was probably in his 13th year in the league.
Or 14th or 15th year.
Yeah, and so we were getting a guy at the end of his career, and our passing game pretty much became a little non-existent, because we ended up finishing the season with Joe Dupek, who you probably can't even figure out the school at. But we ran the ball line, just having a break.
You mean Harvard's? You mean Harvard's Joe Dupek?
Is it Harvard? Is that where?
Yeah, that's where he's from.
That's why our passing game went to hell. Joe was a good guy, man, but our passing game really, we had some really, and we actually had some really good receivers. When you think of guys like Jerry Butler, Perry Tuttle, Julius Dawkins, a lot of guys that were college All-Americans. We had some receivers that really could do some damage. We really just couldn't get the ball to them.
And you know what, Greg, just to piggyback on that, when I was drafted the year before you, I got drafted in the first round with Jim Kelly in Buffalo. Right. Jim Kelly and I actually flew into Buffalo the day of the next day. They flew both Kelly and I into Buffalo. We shared a room, and Kelly was like, "Oh man, we're gonna throw the ball." Man, I was really optimistic about it. For the first time, really in my career, I would have an All-American type quarterback. I was really looking forward to it. But the USFL had come on the scene, and Jim Kelly actually ended up signing with the Houston Gamblers.
Right.
And he called me from Houston the day he signed. He said, "Tony, I just signed for millions, and they want you down here. Come on down." But at the time, we were in negotiations with Buffalo, and they weren't going well. The negotiations were not going well as far as I was concerned. So I told my agent, let's go hear what they have to say. So I flew into Houston, and they made a nice offer and everything. But the thing was, Buffalo found out that not only was Jim already signed by the Houston Gamblers, but their other first-round pick, Tony Hunter, was in Houston right then and there and was thinking about signing with Houston. So Buffalo came back, and actually I think they doubled their offer that they were making to me. And that's why I decided, I said, well, I want to play in the NFL anyway. So I went back to Buffalo, signed that same day. And so Jim was with the Gamblers. But the only thing that I really hate about that situation was I didn't have Jim in Buffalo with me. And Joe, as Greg was saying, Joe Ferguson was at the tail end of his career. And we just couldn't get anything going in our passing game. We never could get it going.
Wow, Tony, so you just missed Joe Montana in Notre Dame and Jim Kelly in Buffalo.
I have the worst luck of any receiver that's ever played football. I missed Jim at Notre Dame. I came out of high school and I missed Joe Montana by 6 months. Okay. I missed Joe Montana. They had just won a national championship the year before. He was drafted by San Francisco, so I missed him. And then I go into the NFL, and I have my Hall of Fame quarterback, Jim Kelly, in Buffalo with me. And then he signs with the Houston Gamblers. I said, oh, man, come on.
Right,
yeah,
okay.
I tell you what, luck is something else.
Oh, man, I'm telling you, because catching the ball from a guy like Jim Kelly, being in that offense, and you know, of course, Joe Montana, but it makes all the difference in the world for a receiver when you have that kind of guy throwing you the football. You know, it could have changed my whole career as far as the NFL is concerned had I stayed healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Greg, let me ask you this one. I asked Tony this actually a couple of weeks ago on the show. Now, in 1987, you got the news that you were going from, you know, basically the frozen tundra of Buffalo to sunny Los Angeles. How did you feel when you got that news?
Well, we had some difference in opinion. You know, one of the things, the hardest thing to do in the National Football League is to decide when you need to have a second opinion. And teams don't really take kind to second opinions. They're, you know, they get a little upset. Well, the long and the short of it is Dr. Weiss had not done his job with me, so I went and got a second opinion.
Oh, okay.
Second opinion, and getting that second opinion and moving forward, I end up having, you know, we started some relationships. It was business. So I had actually negotiated and got a trade done and had myself going to Miami, which was where I really wanted to go because at that time Dan Marino really had not worked with a running back who had, you know, who really was a true running back. He always worked with like Tony Nathan, you know, receiving running back.
Right,
he was looking forward to it. And Don Shula's son, Dave, had really put this deal together, but the Bills basically said, no, we're not going to see him twice a year. Ship him as far away from here as we can get him. And just so happened that Cornelius Bennett and Eric Dickerson, they were looking to get out and do their thing, so it just worked perfect for me. I wanted to, more than anything, I had torn an abdomen muscle doing the split. So You know, you remember the turf we had back in Buffalo, Tony. It was terrible.
Oh, my God. Yes, I remember it.
And so that was the number one reason I was happier than heck, because I was back on natural grass, and I played, when you play your whole life on natural grass, of course, we had the best turf in the world back in Notre Dame.
The best.
So I was looking forward to being back on natural grass, and I was happy about that. Then, of course, who wouldn't be happy to go to a guy like John Robinson, who loves to run the ball. And I thought I could play in anybody's system, and I kind of proved the point that I was still capable of playing. And I researched my career playing on turf, playing on natural turf, playing with John Robinson. And we had a really good unit of team. I mean, we had a great team when we were out in Los Angeles the first time. John, I'm sure if he could do it all over again, he would have held that team together in 89, 90. But they let a lot of guys, they cut a lot of guys, they let a lot of guys go in free agency.
Right. They didn't want to pay anybody, Greg. They didn't want to pay anybody. The Rams were notoriously cheap back then, and a lot of good players got away from them there.
And they let us all go. And the sad thing was, everybody talks about the phantom sack and, what happened when we went up to the 49ers. But earlier in that year, we physically beat the 49ers. And when they came and they beat us on a Monday night in Anaheim, they actually physically lost the game in terms of numbers. They had two plays, two spot. You remember those spot routes, Tony, where you just take
right.
John Taylor ran two spot routes, and both of them went for 98 and 97 yards.
Wow.
Outside of that, they didn't really do anything to beat us.
Yeah.
And we pretty much shut Rodgers down. We shut him down pretty good. But those two plays on Darrell, and it was on Darrell Henley. He was a rookie. That kind of shot, they beat us, I think, by 14, and those were the 14 points they got. So it was one of those things. We could have beat that 49er team. Unfortunately, that's on any given Sunday. They were better than us on the NFC Championship. But we were a good team, that 1989 team. We were a great team.
And I'm glad to see there's going to be a resurgence of that rivalry between the Rams and the 49ers. Hopefully, if the 49ers pick it up a little bit. But you made a good point, Greg, as far as the second opinion, as far as medical concerns go. That was my biggest problems, even with the Rams, because I actually hurt my knee the first week of summer camp. Actually, the first day I practiced, I twisted my knee during the reach drill with, I think it was Mike Wiltshire, but I twisted my knee. But I actually ended up playing 2 years with a torn meniscus in my knee because we misdiagnosed it. And but if I had to do all over again, I would have gotten a second opinion. But as Greg was saying, that was really frowned upon back in those days. And if you were to leave camp and go get a second opinion, you may come back without a job. And I think I saw with Ben Roethlisberger, this is probably, I guess, eight years ago or so, Ben Roethlisberger left summer camp to get a second opinion about an injury that he had. And back in our day, there was no way you could leave camp and go get a second opinion and still have your job when you came back. But times have changed, and that's been a very good change in the NFL, where guys can look after their own health a little bit better. That's a good thing, no question about it.
Well, the second opinion ultimately worked out for Greg. Just one last question for you, Greg. In 1988, you played your first full season with the Rams. You got over 1,100 yards rushing, and you were named Comeback Player of the Year. Now, aside from just kind of thumbing your nose at the Buffalo organization, what does winning Comeback Player of the Year mean? What did that mean to you?
I really can't. Back then, it didn't mean too much of anything.
Right.
What it meant for me personally, I mean, now they give you awards. Heck, you might even get a check for it. For all I know, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where, I just actually finished my first book that we did for kids, for middle school and high school kids, and I talk about being able to deal with the why in the road. I had a true why in the road at that point. You know, you could either lose your confidence, which Tony knows me pretty well. I was a pretty cocky kid, and I tried to put myself,
just a little bit cocky.
But when you talk a lot of stuff, and when you're a kid growing up, that means you got to back it up. And so the one difference I tell people all the time, and Tony will probably understand me completely on this. We went to school with a lot of great athletes, but it was the mental side that beat a lot of them. You know, like I said, we were the cream of the crop that went to Notre Dame, and a lot of those guys were some great football players.
Right.
I think the mental side of the game can beat you to the point where you question your own ability. And so for me, when I went to the Rams and I knew I was capable of producing, my mind continued to stay strong and believe in my own ability. And I think for me, that was probably the most important thing for me, because I had seen it in so many guys that we had played with at Notre Dame. They could have played in the National Football League. It wasn't just me and Crable and Hunter and Stacey Turan. We weren't, I'm not going to say we weren't the top tier that came out of our era, but we had some great players beyond them, but a lot of them lost confidence in their ability, and that was really what the injury did for me in the NFL. As long as I kept my mind positive, I was able to get over that injury. And so comeback player for me just let, you know, the Bills know that, you know what, you let a good player walk away because you lost faith in him, but I didn't lose faith in myself.
Yeah, exactly.
Greg, what's the name of your book? Give us a plug here. You can have a plug.
The book will be coming out. We're actually pressing right now. It's called Athletic Wisdom for Students, How to Manage Life's Wins and Losses. You know, part of the thing I try and tell our kids that, you know, is that life isn't about success and failure, because I don't think anybody goes through life with success and failure, because wins can be improved and losses will definitely be improved. That's something that we learned, that, you know, when you play sports, the one thing you always see is nobody ever has a perfect game. So anything you do, whether you win or lost that game, you still can improve your output. And that's really what we try and teach our kids. And really, our whole purpose of Athletes for Life is to see these kids go on to college, because I think a college education is really something that is impactful, especially for kids from the inner city. And, you know, for me, I was an inner city kid. Unlike Tony, I couldn't go to a big powerhouse like Cincinnati Moeller.
But you had all those athletes up there at Columbus South, though.
Well, you know, the funny thing is I got recruited by a private school, which is the Columbus School for Boys, and it ended up being a real powerhouse in the smaller divisions. But the thing that's different for me, you know, I was born, and, you know, my parents and the whole 9 yards. You know, I tell people from my community, the number one thing they wanted to do was to make sure I stayed in the public system. Those people really wanted to be not only mentors to me, they wanted to be brothers. And, you know, unfortunately, I buried one of my dearest coaches last year, high school coaches, back in August. And it meant a lot for me that they asked me to come back to kind of represent our era, because he was one of those guys who was a mentor for so many of us. And that's why, you know, I tell people, since the day I walked into Notre Dame, you know, I told a lot of people at Notre Dame never knew that I used to mentor a little paraplegic girl. From the point I was 18 years old, I would go and read to her every Tuesday night on our day off. And so it's so much history that you get a chance. This book gave me a chance to really tell people that, you know, I've been a mentor since I was 18 years old, not just mentoring other athletes, but just mentoring kids to, you know, how to read a little bit better, how to concentrate on their academics a little better, how to never lose faith in yourself, and how to have faith in God. So those were all important things for me as I was growing up.
That's excellent, Greg. And I want a copy of that book.
Well, they're coming out in about another 3 weeks. They'll be to my hands, and I'm going to be sending them out because, you know, one of the things I did when I was in Buffalo, I was the spokesperson for Governor Cuomo, and I was with Nancy Reagan for Just Say No. So I've always been a speaker and doing a lot for activism. And so now, for me, I want to get back into going back into schools and telling these kids how to walk away from drugs, how to walk away. A lot of people drink. That was something that never was a part of my life. And a lot of people they're fascinated by that. How could you play in the National Football League and never drink? I told them, I said, there are a lot of things that are important in your life that just didn't have a purpose for me. And I just went all my life just doing the things that I did. And my whole dream was that I wanted to make it to the National Football League. And I wanted to be what I category, success comes to everybody in different levels. I wanted to be successful in what I wanted to do in life, which is, of course, different than Tony's and different than yours as well, Dave. So now you got to plug for that book. You got to plug for that book that's coming out. It's a lot of fun in it. We talk a lot of jokes, but the meaning of the book, we have a program called PASS, and it basically PASS is the acronym for Passion, Attitude, Sacrifice equals Success. And so that's what so we're going to be going out and speaking in schools, and that's what the foundation is really focused on over the next, I guess you say 25 years.
Oh, that's excellent, Greg. That's excellent. And I really do want you to send me a copy of that book. But one thing I wanted to talk about with you before we leave, I went back to Indy this past weekend for the Stanford game. And, man, I tell you what, even in defeat, it's always a pleasure to be back on campus, back in that stadium with the Notre Dame faithful, and just the whole atmosphere is unbelievable. The way ex-players are greeted, the way we're treated, it's a special place. And if I had to do it all over again, and if I were in a position like I was in coming out of high school, where I could go to any school in this country to play football, I would choose Notre Dame again. I really would.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, one of the things I tell people a lot of times, and I guess I get to plug the book once more. We have a section in there that talks about selecting schools. And, part of what I tell people all the time is, the beauty of being a student athlete is you get a chance to meet the most influential people that university has to offer. And
definitely.
Notre Dame was a perfect place for me to grow mentally, socially, and probably most importantly, a lot of people tend to forget, when kids go on their own, just because you're on your own doesn't mean you can't grow spiritually as well. So Notre Dame gave me a great atmosphere to do all the things that I needed to do as a young man, growing up. And
absolutely, I agree.
I saw pictures of Tony and Phil Carter and Augie. I saw him with all the guys, and it's a great place to go back to. Got to get you out here to L.A., man, because going to a game and seeing some of the old teammates is just as exciting.
Oh, I know, Greg. I know, and I plan on. I'm definitely going to catch that new stadium when it comes up. Right now, we need to see if the Reds are going to pick it up, man. They have been, they've lost 2 straight now, and I bet you they are really glad that they're leaving the country and going to London.
I tell you what, the Rams have to really, they got to get some continuity together as an offensive team. For the first time, the defense is banged up and injured. So, when you don't have Aaron Donald and some of the guys in there all together, that defense doesn't play with the kind of tenacity that Greg Williams has put. He's injected his will on that defense, and I think we've got probably one of the better defenses that are going to be around for the next, probably 5 or 6 years.
When they're healthy again.
Yeah, when they're healthy.
Well,
the question now is, how can you get the offense to play like they did last week?
Right.
Because Case Keenum actually stepped out of the mode of Case Keenum. He broke Jim Everett's consecutive passing record with
18. Yeah, right. Exactly.
20. And he had a heck of a game from a quarterback standpoint.
Absolutely.
The problem that they got to figure out, and I really can't put my finger on it. I keep telling people, when when you're building an offensive line, you got to build it through the draft. You can't just go out and pick guys, from other teams, because not everybody has the same skill set. And I think our line right now is not on the same parameters with Gurley, because I think Todd Gurley is a perennial all-pro guy. I think he can run for 1,400 yards every year, like A.J.
he's a
Peterson,
generational talent.
like Eric Dix, But
right, and he only had 14 carries for 58 yards last week.
Right, and he's headed towards a 800-yard season, and I can't see that out of a guy who has the ability that Todd has. I mean, he trimmed down about 15, 20 pounds coming into the season, so not being, he was about 225, not 235 when he came in this year. He's got all the quickness, he's got the downhill, the capabilities of being a perennial all-pro. I just can't put your thumb on it right now, but I really think, from a skill set, they've got to start building their line in the draft. And unfortunately for us, we gave away too many draft picks.
Well, yeah. Now, see, that was our strength when I was with the Rams. The offensive line. I'm glad you mentioned that. Jackie Slater, Big Irv Pankey, Dennis Hare, Tom Newberry. Man, all those guys are going to Pro Bowls. Most of them were going to Pro Bowls. And quite as kept, that was the strength of our team back then. And, that's not the case anymore.
And that's definitely, I don't think that's the strength of their team at this point right now.
So we're with the LA Rams 2.0 show here at the GruelingTruth.net. We're talking Rams football with Greg Bell and Tony Hunter, former Los Angeles Rams. I got to tell you, I knew I was going to be able to just wind you guys up and let you go. You've taken up a lot of my talking points. I did want to say a couple of things. Yeah, Case Keenum was brilliant. I mean, 27 of 32 for 321, 3 touchdowns.
Wow.
Was it 3 or 4?
One interception.
Was it 3 or 4? I thought it was 4 touchdowns.
According to the official stats, I got 3 passing touchdowns.
Oh, yeah, 3. I think he accounted for 1 on the ground, too, right?
Right, yes. 1 rushing touchdown.
I mean, he had a marvelous day.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's not just that. For the first time this season, we saw Case spreading the ball. Kenny Britt, he has 7 catches, 136 yards, 2 TDs, but also we had Lance Kendricks, which is Tony's guy on this team. He's the tight end. He had 5 catches. He had a touchdown. Brian Quick had 5 catches. Devon Austin had 5 catches. Even Todd Gurley got 4 catches. And this is one thing I wanted to say about Gurley, is that I thought he had an excellent game. Sure, only 95 yards total yardage, but looked excellent as a decoy. Did some nice blocking work that Benny Cunningham usually does. Really showed some other skills besides just running the ball. And I think in the next game, now that we actually have, something of a passing game, I think next game you'll see things open up for Todd a little bit. I'm glad you brought him up because, Greg, I was going to ask you, would you put all of Gurley's problems this year on the line?
Well, no, you can't put everything on the line. But, part of it is, I hate to say it, sometimes you got to put without a quality passing team, and you got to remember, this is a team that has not been able to stretch the field whatsoever all year long. I think coming into this game, I want to say his longest pass was, 16 or 17 yards.
It wasn't 20. It wasn't 20.
The fact that you weren't stretching the field makes a difference. When you don't stretch a field, they sink in and they put 8 and 9 guys within the interior box. Yeah. And so,
right.
Todd's been facing a lot of bodies, but you can still make things happen. I mean, I remember when Chicago, that was their whole entire defense. The Chicago Bears, they lived off of 8 and 9 men in the box. But we were
most definitely.
We were still capable of running the ball against them because we had a threat to go deep every single play with Henry Eller, Flipper Anderson, Ron Brown, Aaron Cox. We had some really speed guys. when you got speed guys, you got to use them. And I think part of the offensive coordinator's job is to make sure he puts them in the best scenario facing that defense, so they have an opportunity to have a threat of a deep pass or across the middle pass, which makes those linebackers pull up. They can't always sit up at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, I tell you what, though, I don't think we have much as far as wide receivers with the Rams, but I thought, like you said, Greg, Kenny Britt had a breakout game last week, 2 touchdowns, 136 receiving yards. Case Keenum, what was the they were saying, but basically,
27
I'm sorry, go ahead.
32. He was 27 for 32.
Yes. So, it's a good thing that Jeff Fisher wanted to keep Jared Goff on the bench, the first pick of the draft, and now that Case Keenum is playing much better football, looks like he's going to be able to do that, and I think that's something that Jeff Fisher. I wanted to ask you that question too, Greg. What do you think about Jared Goff? You're out there when you got a chance to see him in preseason. Is he the guy of the future?
Well, he's got an accurate arm, man. I mean, Jim Everett I was talking to him this past week, and Jim made a point to say, when you look at him, you got to remember he's a 21-year-old senior. He actually came out of college early to go into the draft. So he's really in his junior year of college football. He might, when you think about the great quarterbacks, think about the fact that Steve Young sat for a little bit. He
sat for a long time behind Joe Montana, yes.
Think of Brett Favre. He was the number 2 pick in Atlanta. They traded him to Green Bay. He sat behind Mikowski for half the season.
And what about Aaron? That's up there in Green Bay right now. He sat behind Brett Favre.
3 years. Yeah, for three and a half years, he sat behind Brett Favre. So, when you start looking at the quarterbacks that you take a Peyton Manning out of the equation because, honestly, Peyton struggled his rookie year in the league. He threw a lot of interceptions. John Elway threw a lot of interceptions. These are a couple icons of that position that mentally they were strong enough to be able to deal with it. They weren't going to be for all intent and purposes, they're not going to be, Mark Sanchez. I think that's what's taken Mark's lust for life out of his game is the fact that he's lost a lot of his confidence in himself.
All right, he started out so early and
exactly.
Right.
In New York.
Right. But I think Jeff Fisher, he prefers to take it slow. I think he did that down in Houston a few times where that prize quarterback, that top pick at quarterback, he wants him to sit back, learn the offense, learn the defenses before he throws them in the fire. And looks like he's going to get a chance to. Looks like he's going to get a chance to.
Fisher did that last year with Gurley. I mean, there was some concern about an injury he had suffered 18 months before, but he made Gurley sit the first 4 games last year. Fisher does this. He's super conservative. But I did want to point this out too. You talked about the line, and of course I've been picking on the line a lot this season. But you got to remember, here's a line where 4 of your guys have 3 or fewer years of experience in the league. The only guy that's playing this year that hasn't been drafted is Tim Barnes, who they got in a trade with the Raiders last year. But all these other guys, I mean, the whole right side is Wickman and Havenstein. Both of those dudes were drafted last year. Those are 2nd and 3rd round draft picks last year. A guy like Robinson, he was our first round pick, I think, 3 years ago. I think he was number 2 overall. 3 years ago, I want to say. So this line is young.
Okay, and it depends on who's coaching them to us. We had Hudson Houck when I was there with the Rams. I'm not sure if Hudson was there when you were there, Greg, but, I mean, he'd take a rookie like Tom Newberry out of a small school in Wisconsin. And Newberry started for us as a rookie, and I think he made the Pro Bowl that first year. And a lot of that had to do with the type of coaching that he received from Hudson Houck. I'm not sure who the O-line coach is for the Rams right now. Do you, Greg?
No, I'm not sure who it is as well. But, you like I said, part of it is being able to draft, and a lot of that's going to be put on Les Snead Jr. Les Snead and Dimoff. Those are the guys who are running the scouting department. I hate to say it, Lawrence McCutcheon, because McCutcheon's still in the scouting department. So they.
Oh, is he really? He was out there when I was out there, Greg.
Yeah, Clutch has been there a long time, man. He's been there a long time.
Wow. Man, I didn't know Clutch was still there.
Yeah, he's still there.
Okay, you brought up the coaching. I just wanted to ask a couple more questions before we get to next week. I wanted to ask about the coaching now. Here the Rams are. One of their problems this year, and it has been ever since Fisher took over the team, is penalties. These guys are number 2 in the league in penalties. They've been a top 5 penalized team since Fisher took over as a coach. Fisher's quote on this after the game was, "I'm not overly concerned about the penalties." Are penalties a problem? Can you have a winning team with a lot of penalties?
Well, here's the thing. The Raiders have always been one of the most penalized teams in the National Football League, and they've won Super Bowls being the most penalized. You can
they're
win,
number 1 right
but
now.
You can't. Yeah, you can't win when you get penalties in the red zone, because what happens there is you're settling for 3. It stops you from putting 7 on the board. When you get in the red zone, you got to be able to convert and put points on the board. That's what separates a good team from a great team. That's what separated the Raiders of old from the Raiders of new. We got Janikowski who can kick field goals, but when you're the most penalized team, you've got to score when you get in the red zones. And unfortunately for the Rams, if you look at them, 2 weeks ago, it forced us to go back and kick a field goal. They got fumbled up. We were in the red zone, and then we get penalties, push us back, and then we don't even get 3. So the Rams have got to, you're going to play this game. Unfortunately, they're going to be penalties. But you got to, those penalties can't be in the area where you need it the least, which is in the red zone. And so, penalties are going to come. I've played on some teams that were really penalty, and some of them were just stupid penalties versus, some that you can correct. You can't correct a late hit, an abusive late hit, or something of that nature, or a horse collar, because sometimes those are just accidental. But holding, you can prevent holding. You can clipping, things of that nature. That's about coaching.
That's about coaching. I agree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you brought up Janikowski, and he can kick field goals. Well, yeah, he can kick field goals, but he's not supposed to be kicking 12-yard field goals. He's supposed to be kicking.
I noticed that you brought Janikowski's name up as well, Greg. I can remember when the Raiders drafted him. He was a first-round pick.
Yeah.
God, that guy, how long has he been in the league? Has he been in the league 30 years now?
14 years. I think this is his 14th season.
Wow, and the Raiders is the only team that he's played for, right?
Yep. And he will probably play 20. This guy has a leg that's out of this world.
Unbelievable.
Unbelievable. He's got a Harry Oliver body too, even bigger.
Yeah, and the thing is, he was drafted in the first round, so I'm sure he's got a pretty nice contract to start with. He doesn't get the typical kicker salary to start off in the NFL with. He's done pretty well for himself.
He has averaged about $9 million over the last 14 years.
Oh my goodness!
Wow, as a kicker,
kicking a football.
Very well.
And they don't have meetings. When we're in meetings, the kickers are usually playing cards in the locker room or something like that. So, man, what a life! What a life!
How much would you guys have liked to have made $9 million a year when you were playing?
Oh my God! It's a whole new ball game. It's a different world right now. What they're being paid as opposed to what we were being paid.
And you know what? I'm happy for the guys. We were the ground setters for them, just as the guys who came before us were ground setters for us. You know,
definitely.
I mean, Tony and I were pretty well. I mean, I'm sure we were probably some of the highest paid guys for Buffalo because, you know, no one had competition up until when we came out. So the
USFL was around, exactly.
Yeah, although it didn't make it, it helped change the face of the game and it put competition back into the game so these owners wouldn't collude against each other, and they would pay players what they were worth. So it's a great league now for everybody.
Yes, it is.
All right, so talking about next week's game against the Giants in England, of course, I wanted to start with this one, guys. Whenever we talk about travel in sports, you know, we talk about the wear and tear it has on people now, on the players, but now you guys never played in England while you were playing.
I did, twice.
No, I did. You played there too, Greg?
Okay. Yeah, I played in England and Japan twice.
Okay, you played in Japan. I played in London at Notre Dame. I'm sorry, I played in Tokyo, Japan, while I was at Notre Dame in the Mirage Bowl. And then with the Rams, we played the Denver Broncos in a preseason game, I believe it was, and that was in London. But we spent a week there in London where we practiced against the Broncos just about every day, and then we had the game on Sunday. But it was interesting practicing against those guys all week long. I got a chance to see John Elway and those little quick receivers that they had back there. I think they were nicknamed the Three Amigos. And I think they had won the Super Bowl the year before. And just seeing John Elway rifle that ball down the field, and those guys are just breaking and making these sharp cuts, and the ball is right there when they turn around, that was special. That was really special to watch that.
They actually lost the Super Bowl the year before. I went on that trip too, Tony. That was the year I came to the Rams. That was our first, that was that 88 year.
Is that right, Greg? I didn't remember that.
Yeah, so I went to London for that. Then I went. I want to say we went to Tokyo a year, and then I also went to London with the Raiders one year. And you know, it's crazy to play over there. What Tony probably didn't even know is that when I retired, Roger Goodell hired me up to be the vice president. I actually lived in Europe for 2 years.
Wow. No, I did know that. I did know that, Greg.
I was the director of player personnel for the World League of American Football.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
In terms of going back and forth, I went back and forth for 2 years.
Oh, no kidding.
Wow.
I remember the World League. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for correcting me on that, guys. But I guess the question is okay, so what are the effects of this travel?
You know what? When you go, I don't think it has much of an effect at all if you go and you stay for a week like they normally go. I don't think the travel is really that big a factor. If you're there for the whole week, your body has time to adjust to everything, and I don't think it's a big factor when you have that kind of time. What about you, Greg?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a major factor. The only issue that you really will get, like the Rams made the statement that they were going to try and keep the guys up, which really doesn't make any sense because, in essence, when you go there, you lose a day.
Right.
So by the time they left Detroit and got to London and got started, it was already Tuesday. So most of those, keeping them up Tuesday night is a waste of time because, unfortunately, I hate to say it, most of these kids are used to staying up late at night anyway.
Yeah.
You might as well let them go ahead and get a little rest after the game because they need to get some rest. It's a long, I want to say it was probably going to be from Detroit to London was going to be about a 7, probably 8.5 hour flight anyway.
Yeah.
So keeping them up, you didn't really have to keep them up. You probably should have just let them rest a little bit more when they got there because you're going to get up at 8 or 9 o'clock anyway on Tuesday and get started. But like Tony said, by the end of the week, it's a moot point because your body has already become acclimated to being over there for the week. It really is going to be interesting to see what the effect is when they come back. Because when they come back is when they're really – I never felt tired when I went to London. It was always when I came back to the States and I tried to get into my normal routine. I was that's where I felt the jet lag. So I'm not overly concerned about them going over there and playing the Giants. I just see the Giants as being a better team at this stage of the game. So I want to see the defense play great, and I want to see the offense play great together. That's my number one thing that I'm looking for. And then when they get back out here, is getting themselves ready to get back to work into a normal day. That's where they're going to probably feel it the most.
Well, they get the bye week after this game, so that's not a problem in this case.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Well, it's a good thing, but the problem with the bye week is when they get back, it's still going to be Sunday. And so now it's like a pitcher. How many days off is good for you?
Yeah.
See, the other team coming off the bye, they're coming off a win or a loss from that following week. Their body hasn't it's kind of like a professional pitcher. We go once a week. A pitcher goes once every 5 or 6 days, and that keeps them in their routine.
Right.
Even though they'll have a bye week, is understanding what you have to do during that week to prepare yourself for 2 weeks down the road, which is going to be probably most important for them.
Yes.
Right, okay, so we got the Giants coming up now. Now, you're expressing concern about the defense, which you well should. Luckily, the offensive line for the Giants is terrible, has been for a couple of years now. Unfortunately, on our side, not only have we already lost Tremaine Johnson, he won't be playing this week, but LaMarcus Joyner left the game as well, the other cornerback that we have. So secondary is looking pretty weak, and these Giants like to pass. We're just going to have to blitz, huh?
Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure. I'm actually waiting to see what the injury report's going to come back with on our defensive front. Because I'm not 100% sure who's going to be prepared to play this week because they've been a beat-up crew up front.
Yeah, Brockers tried to go in this
blitzing,
game.
But if they're not all ready, we're still going to be undermanned there as well.
Again, Aaron is the only thing that we have going right now on defense, Donald. So we need to get healthy there for sure. But Odell Beckham just had probably the best game of this season.
Yeah.
So he's going to be looking to explode again against the Rams in that young secondary.
Yep. Yeah, he sure is.
Boy. He's a great wide receiver, but Victor Cruz can make some damage as well.
Oh yeah, I like Victor Cruz.
But he still makes those important catches across the middle, and that's something that the Rams have been a little weak on. And like I said, the fact that we really in the last 2 weeks haven't put a lot of pressure on Matthew Stafford, didn't put a lot of pressure. Those are things you got to be able to do against Eli Manning, or Eli still has the arm that he'll pick you apart.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah. This is the scary thing, and I'm glad you brought up Victor Cruz. Cruz came out. He missed basically all of last season. Came out this season, had a great game 1, good game 2, and in the last couple of games, he's only got 3 passes. But that's what scares me, is that he's going to have that game where he has like 9 catches and a couple of touchdowns. That's what's scares me. We don't see him coming. We don't.
He's a great route runner and a gifted receiver, and I expect him to come on. And his big thing has been health. Can he stay healthy? And I think so far this year he's been relatively been able to stay healthy. So if that continues with Victor Cruz and his talent, the numbers will come for him. And I know Odell Beckham is probably really glad to see him back. I'm sure he is. That takes a lot of the defensive pressure that's normally focused on him. They have to focus a little bit more so on Cruz now. So I'm sure Odell is really happy about that.
Yeah, well,
Without a doubt.
Oh. Well, okay, just keep you here for a couple more minutes, guys. All right, so we're looking at going into the bye week. The Rams will be either 4-3 or 3-4. Assuming we're 3-4, are you guys happy with that, considering that we were pretty much expecting 500 this year?
Well, right now we're in second place in the NFC West. So, and Seattle, they've won, 3 straight, and they're in first place. They're at 4-1. So they're about ready to run away with the division. It's time for the Rams to pick it up if they expect to compete for the AFC West division. So, no, it's time for the Rams to pick it up because it looks like Seattle has caught their stride right about now.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I can't tell you. I mean, when you're sitting at 3-1 and you're in first place of the division after the quarter of the season's gone by, and then all of a sudden you start dropping 2, possibly 3.
Right.
This team 2 weeks ago had the ability to win 10 games. And I still think they have that ability to win 10 games and really qualify for the playoffs out of this division, if not as a divisional champ, as a wild card. So, no, going 8-8 is not what we're looking for here, because if this team goes 10-6, makes the playoffs, I think the excitement will continue to flourish from an attitude standpoint as well as from a fan standpoint. The fans will be happy, and they'll show their happiness. I can tell you this because I went to St. Louis the last couple of years. When they knew that team was going to leave, it was terrible to walk inside that stadium.
Oh, why is that?
It was just empty. Nobody could care less.
Wow.
And so, when you get a team and you see the excitement, and I mean, they're getting a lot of fan support, 90,000 every home game.
Incredible.
And you want to go out and play with the enthusiasm, and that's what's going to be important for this team. As they rounded out last year, they had no enthusiasm towards the end of the year, and they played like it. I think that if they can come back and get in home, you don't like losing at home. I think they got a bad taste losing at home. So they want to change that feeling. If they can just win 8 games and those 8 games are at home, you're going to split another 3 or 4 on the road. So they got to protect home. I think that's one of the things that Jeff Fisher's really impressed upon them. And I think this team still can win 10 games this year, but they've got to get on the road. And they can't be on a negative road. They got to get on a positive road.
You know what? I was really interested to see if the fan base there in L.A. were going to really support the Rams coming back. And I've been really surprised at how strong the fan support has been for the Rams this year, especially after that opening game against San Francisco where we just looked terrible. The Rams looked terrible. I wondered if L.A. was going to lose interest, but they haven't, and the fan support has been there for them.
Yeah, I don't know. I have not been one of the skeptics about Los Angeles football, and here's why. The knock has always been this. Of course, we haven't had football here for like 20-plus years, and the other knock is this, that so many people in Los Angeles and Orange County are transplants. We're coming from other places. If we like football, we're bringing our favorite football team with us. But I also think in Los Angeles, it doesn't matter. Look, the weather is always great. Maybe you're not a Rams fan, but maybe your team is in town, so you go. The new facility that they're going to build is fantastic out there in Inglewood. It's fantastic. It's going to be great.
Oh, I can't wait to see that.
I mean, I think in a lot of ways, Los Angeles is a perfect market for the 21st century. I think that this team is going to sell a lot of tickets to people who aren't necessarily Rams fans, who are just football fans. I think you're going to see a lot of that. And
you know what, Greg, I wanted to ask you this. I've heard people say that L.A. is not a sports town. I didn't find that to be the case. When I was in Los Angeles, I mean, the high school football is excellent. There are athletes all around this country that are playing for professional teams that grew up playing, grew up in the high school system in Los Angeles, whether it be Major League Baseball, whether it be football.
Rookie. Los Angeles has the best rookie in the NHL right now. There's a Los Angeles kid playing for Toronto who scored 4 goals in his first ever game. He's from Los Angeles.
Wow.
He's from here.
Yeah, this is a great sports town. We got all 4 sports towns right now. It's fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't know what
California as a whole is putting out a lot of professional athletes, and why that is, I can't tell you. You know, from a football standpoint, you know, I've grown to see the excitement of football out here, and you know, that's one of the things we're excited about. You know, I'm going to Boise State on Thursday to see 5 of my kids from my camp that are starting and playing for Boise State right now.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So it's one of those things, man, where this is a sports town.
Yeah.
But you got to remember too, it's a everything town. We got everything from entertainment to sports to heck, you know, the skateboarding, the X game. I mean, everything happens here on top of the fact that you can go to the beach and still lay out right now.
Exactly. Okay. Yeah. Exactly.
Go surfing. There's another great California
sport. They surf year round out here.
Right.
California and LA is a sports town, but we got a lot of other things you can do here as well.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's very fragmented. That was one of the things they played the Super Bowl in New York a few years ago, and one of the complaints about it was it seemed like it was just another thing in New York. You know, it's just something else to do because it's New York. You know, there's so much stuff to do out there. And I think it's kind of the same way here. But I'll tell you what, almost everybody I talk to has at least one team that they follow, whether it's USC football or the Kings or the Dodgers or whatever. Almost everybody watches some sport. It's just a bit more fragmented out here, I think. But with 20 million people in the Los Angeles, Orange County area, yeah, we can sell out 80,000 for the Rams every week.
Wow, yeah. That's impressive.
Not a problem.
They are filling that Coliseum up. I wasn't sure if they could do that, but they're getting it done. So,
They sure are. All right, well, I'll let you guys go. Greg, tell us what's up with you. Tell us how the people can follow you. Do you do Twitter? Do you do Facebook, anything like that?
Yeah, I do Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Of course, Facebook is under Leon Bell, which most of my buddies know me as Leon back there. It's my dad's name. GL. Yeah. On Instagram, of course, it's Athletes for Life Foundation on Instagram, and Greg Bell 428 on Twitter. So, and of course, you can always go to athletesforlife.org, athletesforlife.org, just like it sounds, ATHLETESFORLIFE.org.
Fantastic.
All right.
Tony, any last words of wisdom for you? When are we going to hear the Notre Dame podcast this week?
Yeah, I think it's tomorrow. I believe we're going to get the show done tomorrow, and we have a lot to talk about. And Greg, I just want to say I really appreciate you, my man, for being on the show. Absolutely. And you were the only one that was missing this weekend. Phil Carter, Augie was there, and so a lot of my classmates from Notre Dame that I haven't seen in years. It was really special, man. Wish you could have been there. But thanks for doing the show, and we hope you can come back and do it again with us.
Yeah. All right. Please do, Greg. Thanks very much for showing. I'm Oz Davis for Tony Hunter and our special guest, Greg Bell, and you've been listening to the Grueling Truth Los Angeles Rams 2.0 weekly show presented by Gridiron Mo. We will talk to you next week.
I'm not going 7-9. Okay?